Welcome to Byte-Sized Tech. Have you ever done this? You load up your dishwasher, you use one of those fancy, expensive detergent pods, run the longest, hottest cycle, only to open it up and find, well, disappointment. You know, bits of food still stuck to the plates, that weird greasy film on the glasses. It's just so frustrating. But what if I told you the problem isn't your machine at all? What if it's the way we've all been taught to use them?
Yeah, it's one of those super common household headaches, right? You buy this appliance to save you time, but it feels like you're doing half the job by hand anyway, just pre-washing everything. The truth is, you might be accidentally fighting against your dishwasher's own design, all because of the kind of detergent you're putting in it.
Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to solve this whole dirty dish mystery for good. Here's the plan. First, we'll get into the great dishwasher debate. Then, we're going to bust the myth of the pod. After that, I'll show you the critical hot water hack. Then we'll look at the data from putting detergent to the test. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with your guide to cleaner dishes.
All right, let's get right to the heart of the matter. For years, we've been told that those little single-dose pods are the best thing since sliced bread. But here's the problem. There's a huge fundamental disconnect between how those pods work and how your dishwasher was actually engineered to clean. Now, take a look at this. This reveals a secret step that most of us don't even know exists, the pre-wash. See, your dishwasher isn't designed for just one big cleaning blast. It's actually a really smart two-part mission. It starts with a quick pre-wash to just knock off all the easy stuff. Then it drains all that dirty water away, and then it hits the dishes with the main detergent dose in fresh, hot water to go after the really tough, stuck-on grime.
So what is this pre-wash exactly?
Well, it's a pretty genius first move. For about 10 or 15 minutes, the machine just uses plain water to rinse off things like syrup, ketchup, loose crumbs, all the easy stuff. Then, and this is key, it drains all that gunk away. This keeps your main wash cycle from turning into a gross soup, which lets the main detergent dose attack the hard stuff, like grease and baked-on cheese, with its full power. And this slide right here, this is where you can see the problem clear as day. Your machine has a dispenser with a little door that's designed to keep the main soap locked away until after that pre-wash is finished. But a pod, it's all or nothing. You toss it in that main dispenser, and it just sits there doing absolutely nothing during that whole first cleaning phase. You're basically wasting the first 15 minutes of the cycle. So this really hits the nail on the head. As the source material says, these pod products basically disrespect the way your machine was built. They force this one-size-fits-all approach onto a system that was designed for a much smarter two-stage attack. You're trying to clean, but with one hand tied behind your back. All right, now for part 2 of our deep dive, the critical hot water hack. Because it turns out it's not just about when the soap gets used, it's also about how it gets activated. And there's a ridiculously simple trick you can do before you even press start that can make a massive, massive difference. It's all about the temperature. So here's a fun fact. If you're in North America, your dishwasher probably has a pretty weak heating element inside. Now, that's not a flaw. It's actually on purpose, mainly to avoid tripping circuit breakers. The machine is designed with the assumption that it's going to get a big head start by filling up with hot water straight from your home's water heater. But what happens when that water has been sitting in the pipes and has gone cold? Well, the difference is night and day. If your dishwasher fills with cold water, that little heater inside really struggles, and it might never get the water hot enough before the cycle moves on. But if you just run the hot water at your kitchen sink for a minute until it's steamy hot right before you start the dishwasher, you give the machine the giant head start it was designed for, and that ensures the water gets hot enough to actually do its job.
And why is that temperature so critical? Because modern detergents are full of enzymes. Think of them as tiny little Pac-Men that literally digest the proteins and starches off your dishes. But for those enzymes to wake up and get hyper-effective, the water has to hit this magic number, about 140 degrees Fahrenheit or 60 Celsius. If you start with a cold fill, you might never unlock your detergent's real cleaning power. Okay, so theory is one thing, but let's look at a real-world test to prove it. For this experiment, they coated some glass jars in probably one of the most annoying things to clean: peanut butter that was melted and then resolidified. Then they ran one cycle starting with cold water from the tap and another one starting with hot water. And whoa, the results from that test are just striking. With the cold water fill, it took the machine a full 45 minutes to finally get that peanut butter off. But with the hot water fill, totally clean in just 25 minutes. That's a 20-minute difference in cleaning power just from running the tap for a second first. It's huge. But wait, it gets even better.
They ran the test again with a hot water fill, but this time they added just 1 little teaspoon of powdered detergent for that pre-wash cycle. The results were even more impressive. That tiny bit of soap in the first rinse gave the water the power to start breaking down the fats and oils in the peanut butter right away, which made the main wash even more powerful. Okay, so we've established the machine wants 2 doses of soap and it wants hot water. But that brings up a really good question, right? Aren't the super expensive pods just chemically better? Is that why they sometimes seem to outperform cheap powders?
And this is a totally fair point. Lots of people have tried switching to some cheap, generic powder and been really disappointed with the results. It makes you think that maybe the pods, even though they miss the pre-wash, just make up for it with a super-powered formula. But is that actually true?
Well, let's look at the cold hard lab data. An independent lab ran a bunch of standardized blind tests comparing a very popular big brand premium pod against a new, well-formulated loose powder. And the results are fascinating. The powder actually won. It met or even beat the pod's performance in almost every test and ended up with a slightly higher score overall.
So what does this tell us? Well, first, that the packaging, whether it's a fancy plastic pod or a simple box, it doesn't matter. It's all about the chemical formula inside. Second, it kind of confirms what we've all suspected. Big brands often make their cheap powders intentionally less effective to push you towards their more profitable pods. And most importantly, it proves that a high-quality powder can give you absolutely top-tier cleaning.
So let's bring this all home. Let's put everything we've learned into a simple, actionable guide you can use to take back control of your dishwasher and get the amazing results you've been missing. Here we go, just 4 simple steps. Number 1, switch to a good loose powder detergent. This puts you in control. 2, use that 2-dose method. A little bit of powder on the door for the pre-wash and the main dose in the covered cup. 3, always run your tap until the water's hot right before you hit start. And finally, number 4, play around with your machine's cycles. The normal button isn't always the best. Try heavy or high temp. They can make a world of difference. And at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, putting you back in the driver's seat. When you use loose powder, you get to decide how much to use. You can use a little less for a light load, a little more for a greasy one. You're not stuck with some preset amount that a marketing team decided on. You get to use your machine the way the engineers who built it actually intended. And that really leaves us with one final big question to think about. We've just seen that working with your machine's design, using simple tools like powder and hot water, gives you better results. So why are the store shelves completely packed with complicated, expensive products that do the exact opposite? Kind of makes you think, doesn't it? If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, share, and subscribe.